Brothers and sisters, great to have you joining me this morning. I'm Pastor Chuck Blair, and we're going to be talking about a little inspiring message as we launch into the weekend. So it's interesting to talk about an inspiring messages or a real downturn in this story. Many of us are at least vaguely familiar with the story of Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden, and the fact that Adam and Eve get kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and that's the part we're looking at today. And I'm gonna share with you some interesting sort of bigger picture parts of this story that I think are endlessly fascinating. So we're looking today at Genesis 3, verse 23. And Jehovah God sent them away from the garden to cultivate the ground from which they were taken. Really interesting, right? Really interesting. This is the part where they're sent out of the garden, where they're sent out of paradise, where they're sent out of this original sort of state, state of innocence, whatever you want to call it, and they're out there into the world. And here's an important part. This is the hero's journey. I want to just be so crystal clear about that. This is the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell famously said there's actually a meta narrative in all heroes' stories. In other words, every single hero story follows the exact same path. And you watch any Walt Disney movie, it's a different story, but the same plot. And it's the same with all the heroes' story. It's a different story, but the same plot. And the plot begins with this time of, sort of Garden of Eden, this time of innocence, carefreeness, whatever you want to put on it. And then something happens. There's a troubling event, and all of a sudden, people are out of the garden, or they're forced to go on a journey away from home to find some sort of resolution, some sort of path, some sort of quest. And it's a beautiful idea, folks. And so I want to start with that. I want to start with just this idea that, all right, so we've all, I imagine, feel a longing for home, and maybe it's not actually home as in like home of origin, but just a longing for home, a longing for home. And it's so, in many ways, that's a very sort of bittersweet feeling a lot of the time. And that's part of the journey because we have a sense of something, and then we know that we've moved past it or on from it, but we still have a tie to it. And somehow that tie to that thing that was becomes a little bit of a call to what could be. In our particular denomination, we call that embeddedness, that thing within, we call it remains, which is kind of an interesting word. And the word remains, it's the idea that this is what remains with us. And again, it's something that we pull from our past or from our life experience that also kind of morphs over into a call to moving forward in life. And it's this deep-seated love, this deep-seated stirring in our hearts that we just absolutely know to be true. That idea, folks, of remains is incredibly beautiful, and it's talking. I mean, you see the obvious metaphor there. Here, God is saying your job will be to cultivate the ground from which you were taken. Beautiful charge, and that's all about remains. Your job is to take these parts, these deep, 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 deep inner parts, and cultivate them through our lives. And it of course doesn't make the leaving of home, kicked out of the garden, whatever, doesn't make it easy, but it does give us a sense of, yeah, just of purpose, and that we're on the path, and that this longing, in this strange way, this longing for home that comes from those remains, comes from that earth that's deep within, from which we were created. That longing might be the answer to the longing itself, if that makes sense. In the Sikh tradition, they talk about this longing, and they said this longing is both the pain and the cure, which is interesting. It's the pain because it's very, very painful to that whole idea of leaving Eden is very painful. And at the same time, it also creates a longing, and that longing creates a call that will, in the end, friends, bring us home. That will, in the end, bring us home. It just, I wish I had some big story to tell with that. It just, I don't have one right off the top of my head. It's just something I've been thinking about a lot this morning, and just thinking about a lot over the past couple of days. Like, make that longing for home your friend. Befriend it, because that longing for home actually is what keeps us moving in our lives. And I was even thinking yesterday, just a little bit about today, I don't know whether everybody feels it. I really don't. I mean, and maybe everybody does. I know certainly a lot of people do, and certainly a lot of church going people do. Why do church unless you have a sense of that? And yet, it's just something important. Whether whatever environment you might find yourself in, to just honor it, give voice to it, um, think about it. Maybe have a conversation with someone today. Just, yeah, this is where I felt like this is the time where I felt like I left Eden, and this is that little bit of home that I've carried with me all this time. And this little bit of home, little bit of dirt that I've carried with me, it's something I was born from. And I find if I can just sort of just breathe for a minute outside of the pain of that, I can start to see that create maybe a little vision for the future that God might be calling me to. Just a little something to think about. Again, God's economy wastes nothing. Again, we have to view these stories not as that there are things wrong, but that this is just what happens. We're all going to end up out of the garden at some point in time. I think we're all going to end up with that little longing for home that's going to create a little bit of sadness over what we've lost and left behind, and also at the same time can create a beautiful call with what could be. So that's my thought for today, friends. And again, I hope you have a great weekend, maybe even creating a little bit more of those remains, those deep-seated memories, those little touches of home. So, with that, friends, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little meditation followed by a prayer. And then, if anybody cares to leave a little social media comment, again, they get left on different places. And I do appreciate that. I try to get through them throughout the course of the day. So, with that, friends, let's get a little breath. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends, let's hop onto a little social media here and see how people are doing as they're heading into this weekend. And again, I love the idea, right, of taking care of the hero within, because we're all on this hero's journey. And for those of you right now, and I imagine there's a large number of you going like, I ain't no hero. Well, that's part of the hero's journey too. You look at any good story, everybody ends up starting thinking, who the heck am I to be doing anything heroic? All right, friends, a quick hello to people here. Patricia, great to see you joining us this morning, and good morning to you. Linda, good morning to you, and I hope you're doing very well. Jen writes, good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and certainly wish that to all of you, that you have a fun weekend. I know a lot of people in this area head down to the shore, and if you're heading out to anywhere fun on vacationish things, more power to you. Um, Rita writes, "Good morning, all." And totally agree with that, Rita. Marcus, good morning to you, buddy, and hope you're doing well. Teresa, Teresa writes, "Good morning. I've always had a quiet search for home in my heart." Yeah, boy, Teresa, that's a great sermon title, actually. A quiet search for home in my heart. One author I read had a beautiful line. Actually, it wasn't. They were quoting somebody. They said, "We're all in search of the small piece," which is so interesting, right? Like that quiet search for home, the small piece in our lives, and PEACE is pretty darn fascinating to me. Beth, thank you so much. I'm so glad you joined us this morning, my friend. Good food for thought. Have a great weekend, everybody. And to that, all we'll add, Linda, may it be good food for thought, and may you have good food this weekend. I'm going out to lunch with some parishioners who just happen to be in town from Michigan today, which will be a ton of fun. And Tina, everyone have a great weekend, and totally agree with that, friend. So thank you folks so much for joining us this week. And whether you're watching it, anytime today or in the weeks ahead, it's wonderful to hear from you. And yeah, wonderful to just be on this journey with us, because maybe we're all on the hero's journey, and may yours be blessed this weekend. Take care, friends. Bye-bye.